Hello, everyone, and welcome to Your IP, Your Future with Creative First. Our guest today is Kavish Sinha. He's a casting director in the Indian film industry and has founded his casting company On My K Roll in 2016. He has cast for international television series like Good Karma Hospital for UK, Jack Irish for Australia. In addition to Indian productions, Rudra, The Edge of Darkness, Rocket Boys, Mumbai Diaries, Pal Pal Dil Ke Paas, The Office, Fan, Hasmukh, and Pawan and Pooja. He has also cast for over 200 TVCs. Previously, he has worked as an assistant casting director at Yashraj Films. And prior to his foray in casting, Kavish has worked as a brand manager and strategist at top advertising agencies in the country. He is also a PG diploma holder in intellectual property rights law from the National Law School of India University. Kavish, welcome to this discussion.
Thank you. Thank you so much. What a great introduction. Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about how you became a casting director?
Serendipity. I mean, that's the only thing that comes to my this thing. I was just straight out of advertising and marketing and social media and stuff. Was juggling, and kind of like shuffling around careers. Wasn't happy anywhere, and uh, just by luck, I happened to meet Shanu Sharma, who's the casting director at Yash Raj Films, and absolutely enjoyed what she was doing. I would just hang with her in the car, just go for drives and everything. She was a very good friend, and and I used to keep hearing her, like what she's talking. Because she was perpetually working, like perpetually working. So even when she was hanging out, she was constantly on calls and kind of briefing her assistants when I wasn't one. Um, and I just kind of like got very intrigued about what she does, and I happened to ask her if I could join her as an assistant, and she was very skeptical initially because she was worried about the salary and the payment, like how, because I was earning quite a bit back then. And I said, that's okay, I want to learn this, so that's completely fine if if you don't match my monies. And that's how I became a casting assistant at YRF, and the journey started. I worked with her for about a year and a half, and then I forayed independently and started on my K roll. And yeah, so that's how the casting journey began, and kind of now into it completely.
So, for the general public, people say when you look at casting, it's just auditioning people, but there's so much more to it. Could you tell us a little bit more about what it really takes to create a great casting team and also the finer details of casting?
Yeah, in fact, auditioning is frankly the easiest part of it. Finding the right people to audition. You can just imagine, that our business is all about human beings. We are dealing in and out daily, just with humans who are actors, and they're probably the most hardworking humans on the face of earth. Acting today is one of the toughest jobs, or probably ever since it has existed, could be the toughest. I mean, I'm very new to this business, but then they've been doing this for years, and I can only imagine how tough it is. Uh, Obviously, matching your director's vision, your writer's script. I mean, the script is sacrosanct completely, when it comes to casting. uh, so auditioning actually comes in much later. We first have to kind of like find the right faces, the right talent, if everybody's fitting in that particular brief that we've gotten from the director. And that is what the toughest part is, to get the right faces. Like, fortunately, before we get into auditioning, we share pictures or introduction videos or any sort of previous work links of actors with the directors. Then we shortlist, at least in my company. I mean, I'm not somebody who will do a cattle call for for auditions and have 100 people test for one particular part. I'm very particular about filtering, who we are calling, so that we are not wasting an actor's time. First of all, more than my time, I think an actor's time is very, very important. Rather than having them sit in my office for hours, and just wait for their turn to come, I'd only have 5 people come in a day, so that we're very well organized and kind of like absolutely streamlined with the auditions that we are doing. So auditioning comes in much later. Obviously, audition is the last nail, that you hit, and if that goes well, then everything is just absolutely perfect after that. But yes, like I said, filtering the right people, seeing if they fit the brief, kind of also thinking out of the box at times, and not going with the conventional choices. Like, if we get a brief, so we'd like to kind of like present Northeast Indian option for that, bringing in more diversity to the casting, bringing in more inclusivity to the casting. There's so many things that have become so important right now, and casting's not the classical form of casting that used to exist anymore. We are trying to we're trying to make every project path breaking in terms of casting because it's being written about. Smaller characters are becoming the biggest stars in a particular show or a project. So we have to kind of look at it holistically. It's not just about casting the five leads well and then not really bothering about the other cast. Everybody, even to the non-speaking actors, in a particular scene, are so important currently, and a lot rests on them. So yes, auditioning ke alawa, we actually do a lot of other things before that. Reading the script and understanding what is being written is also very complicated, because people think that we do not have the brains to kind of understand the script and stuff. We also have feedback so many times, when we say that this won't be possible, this is very difficult to cast, or this is very difficult to get. Directors do understand that today, and they kind of like collaborate with us as HODs, as very important HODs in the entire realm of things.
What impact has the pandemic had on, on casting?
So obviously the process has changed. People have become more technically advanced, with newer forms of auditioning and stuff like that. We have learned to send voice notes for briefs instead of like calling people to the office and briefing them personally. So yes, I think the most beautiful part about the pandemic has been that we've technically really what do you call it, trained ourselves. We really conditioned ourselves to be more technical in terms of using a tripod and figuring out lighting, which actors didn't really, a lot of actors did not really care about earlier. It's become quicker. To me, I think the beauty of post pandemic casting has been that it's become more productive. Like in a day where we were calling 10 people to the auditions, to the office, and testing them, giving them proper time to be briefed and proper time to prepare, and we would only handle 10. Now we get at least 25 self tapes from homes. So yes, but having said that, for a lot of parts it's also complicated, when there are deeper nuanced parts, which need at least 2 or 3 scenes to be performed. Then it becomes a bit of a task to get those self tapes and all. But I had a great run during the pandemic. I mean, I was craving a Sunday literally, and it was I was so blessed. I mean, obviously health wise also, everything was fine. Everybody at home was good. All my kids were absolutely fine. So we just kept praying for the world, and prayed for a Sunday too. Because we were working from my place. All the 7 kids were at my place, and we were working constantly. We've cast Rocket Boys during the pandemic. We've cast Satyamev Jayate during the pandemic. The Empire was cast during the pandemic. There were so many projects that we've actually wrapped up during. Rudra started during the pandemic, and most of the auditions came in from homes. So we just conditioned ourselves that this is the way it's going to be. There was this beautiful show called Dil Bekarar on Hotstar that we had cast for Habib Faisal. That was done all through the pandemic. So yes, I did not get any time. Post pandemic, I think it's just become more technical and very productive for me particularly. I haven't really faced. But yes, having said that, there are, like I said, there are some auditions that you definitely need people to come in personally to your office and understand, take that brief from you, because we want to do multiple renditions of a take. Director wants to see more takes or more sort of differentiations in the rendition. So that is when you need them to come physically to you.
How has casting changed? In the last few years, we're seeing there's a growth of online curated content. So, does casting change from a feature to a web series, or from a large scale production to a small scale production?
See, I don't see a lot of change between a web series and a feature film, because both are very high content, long formats. I mean, so basically everything stays the same. We cannot, just have a person cast via an introduction to be placed in a speaking part in a web series or a film for that matter. Obviously it's very different than ads, because ads is more about the faces, more about the expressions, rather than their skills and craft. Particularly there are so many times when we only cast a person because he's quirky looking, or he has some sort of idiosyncrasy about him or something like that. But films and web are very similar in terms of casting, because both are longer formats, both have content to deliver. In fact, web series is much difficult because here you are presenting about 360 minutes, or 300 minutes of a particular script, which otherwise has to be subsumed in a 1.5 hours or 90 minutes of a film. So here it has more length, it has more details in terms of the writing also, because what otherwise you had to do in 2 lines in a film, here you can write 3 pages about that. So film and web series casting is exactly similar. Apart from the fact that with films we have the script in hand always, with web series there are most of the times where episodes keep coming in while you've already started casting. So that is one thing that is a difference. I mean, there are very few web shows which are completely written. The Bible will always be ready. The episodic beats will always be ready, but the dialogue drafts and all keep coming in as you are casting, because it's that is also a process. And so that's the only difference. With scripts, with films, you always have a hardbound script in your hand before you start auditioning or casting, for that matter. You know the entire film. With web, there are sometimes when you don't really know what's happening in episode 7, or what is going to how episode 8 is going to pan out. So, but you know the arc of the show. You've been told by the director, how they're looking at closing the show. Where is the character going from one place to the other, in the entire series. So, yeah, that's, I think, is the only difference. And nothing's really changed.
How do you discover new talent?
With a lot of hard work. It's difficult, because faces don't suffice anymore. There were those gone are the days when you would just find a pretty face and say, isko cast karna hai. Now we have to like really delve deeper into where they're trained from. If or not they're actors, even. I mean, to me, I will always believe that there's no such thing as a bad actor. Either you are an actor or you are not an actor. It's just as simple as that. A good actor or a bad actor does not exist for me. An actor is somebody who's worked on his craft, who's learned the details, who's done that tapasya of becoming an actor in this country. And I think India is so difficult, just as a country, to be an actor, because we are the only country with, I don't know how many dialects of Hindi, and then some other 65 languages that we speak. The scripts keep changing, the tonality keeps changing, the looks keep changing within a country. And when I think of like casting in the US or a UK, I'm like, what difference can they find? Like I mean, they can obviously just include diversity and the other people that are staying there, but the language is the same. It's so homogenous, when it comes to casting in those. But India is really difficult that way. There
So
are
do
times.
you kind of travel when you're,
Yes, when
discovering
there is
talent?
local, yeah, when there's local casting needed, we do travel, because I like to bring in that authentic flavor from, and that's the beauty of casting in this country. I think it's just so gorgeous the way it happens, because if you need somebody who speaks Bhojpuri, you'd rather go and sit in Bihar and get the most authentic people. Fortunately, Bombay is a melting pot of cultures, of languages, of everything. So people from Bihar will be existent in Bombay, actors from Bihar, so they can speak Bhojpuri. But if we need somebody who speaks Assamese, for that matter, I'd rather go to Assam and and audition people there than try and fake it here, or ask a Bengali to speak some words in Assamese, and just pass it like that. So that does not happen anymore. So casting, I think, has become very directed. It's become very directed. It's become very focused. It's become very. It has to be relevant casting today, because
Not to mention very professional.
yeah, yeah, very proficient, and but also the audience is such a hawkeye for everything these days. There are film critics sitting in every household probably today. They just sit there and they judge, and most of the times they judge it right. And they feel that if it's not connecting with the audience, like if you're making a show in UP, and if a person from UP is not connecting with it, then you've gone wrong somewhere clearly. There's something wrong either with the writing or with the casting, because these are the only two things that come out there like that. I mean, actors carry a lot on their shoulders. They carry a lot of burden. Like, even a costume has to look good if the actor is acting well. If the costume cannot be acting, the dialogues will sound well only if the actor is delivering them well. So I think the actors have the onus of a lot of things. When the actor is acting well, that's when people say, it's directed well, or the costumes are great, or what great dialogues, because somebody's delivered it them right into your heart at that point in time. and those actors ka onus is on us. So you can imagine how responsible, or what sort of responsibility we carry as casting directors, to be a part of a particular project. I mean, a lot rests on us. If one wrong cast happens or one wrong actor enters the show, everything just goes down the drain.
So, for a new talent to be applying for the first time, maybe he or she is auditioning for the first time, what are the do's and don'ts?
So with actors, particularly with the do's, I just say that don't be an actor. First of all, you cannot act in your real life also. That's your profession. So there are a lot of people who come to me and meet me for the first time, and they start acting in that. They'll say namaste with a nick of the neck. They'll just say namaskar. You cannot be a news reader all the time. You cannot be an actor all the time. That is what irks me the most. Also, before becoming an actor or before saying you're an actor, particularly, it's so easy because people, today have started misusing the term passion so nicely. I mean, they just call their hobbies their passion, and they just call their time passes their passion, and they'll just say, acting is my passion. If acting was your passion, you'd be Nasiruddin Shah by now. It's just as simple as that. So don't come and faff around like this with casting directors just to impress them, because we will eventually be impressed only and only by your metal in your work. When once you show us your craft, once you show that we are convinced that you are a good actor, or you are an actor for that matter, like I said initially. So that is the most important part to me, that don't faff around, don't go by the books, don't listen to what your peers are saying just because you're staying with five other actors who tell you to move around a certain way, to dress up a certain way. Break the clutter, break that clutter, break the pattern. Don't do what has been going on for the past 20 years in Aram
Give us
Nagar.
an example. Probably the audience, especially an audience like this, would want to know. For example, you mentioned very beautifully earlier, you're either an actor or you're not, which means there isn't some great importance given if you're out of a formal acting school. If you may be an inborn actor, and you may have noticed when you travel regionally.
Yeah, yeah,
I think also that talent doesn't know, because they are a little probably, overwhelmed. They're like, oh my God, Kavish is coming. We have this casting. We don't know what's going to be asked. Some may not
absolutely.
even come forward. So,
Yeah.
what's your kind of, a mantra for them? What is it that they should come prepared with?
I just think, Loita, for me, I first see a person and then see an actor. So I think if you're right in your heart as a human being, and for me as a casting director, I've always put enough importance in interacting with my actors. First of all, understanding where they're coming from, understanding their psychographics, their demographics. Also comes from that advertising research issues that I've gone through. But it always helps. There are times when I know that who will be able to kind of convey this emotion better than a person who's never really faced any sort of loss in life. So these are certain things that I also assess as a casting director. Also, I'm a people's person. I'm really big on people. I'm so big on human beings you can't even imagine. I love them. It gets a little hectic at times, because there are so many energies that transpire, and I also get a little tired in my head. But having said that, I chose this profession only for a reason, and the reason was to be a channel to human beings' aspirations. And actors are ambitious people. They're very aspiring people. They're very hardworking people for sure, and most of the time very clueless people as well. They're extremely clueless, particularly in other cities, like you said. So if you go to smaller cities like a Lucknow, I mean, they're so talented. First of all, they have the gift of the bhasha. Their Hindi is absolutely pristine. They're speaking proper language and everything. Their Urdu is really good, but they just do not know how to project themselves. So the first thing they'll come and do is, say, ki, they'll just call you Namaste Bhaiya. कैसे करना है, you कहाँ जाना है, and you just realize that just hold on, just be good at what you do, and I will tell you how it is to be done. So I know I've just kind of like muddled up the question and got kind of like gone into a different trajectory altogether, but
Actually, you're on the right path. It's a good example to know.
there
But
is so
so
much
my
to actually tell about your
question is,
question.
say, I walk
Yeah.
into a set in Lucknow, and you're there, and I say, how are you, bhaiya? Abhi kaise karna hai? is so what I think the audience wants to know is, yes, then the casting director does play a role. You should come forward if you have talent, come to
Absolutely,
these
absolutely.
auditions. I think people like you are there in the room who guide them कि ठीक है आपको ऐसे करना है, so you all do guide, right? I think that's what I was
Yeah,
trying to get at.
yeah. The
Go through
biggest
a
problem
process.
is that casting is a process. I mean,
Yeah.
from the time that you've come to audition for me to the time you're on the sets acting for the director, it's a process which is something I cannot uh, subsume to you in a minute of conversation that I have. There are so many times actors come to me and they say, "Ab iske aage kya?" There's a lot iske aage, and I will never be able to tell you in those many words or in that period of time ki iske aage kya, because everybody has a very different journey in acting. Every actor will go through a very different journey. It's not a if there's no process, there's no pattern, there's no particular realm, that you can just follow and say that this is uske saath aisa hua tha, to main bhi yahi path chunta hu. You will have a different timeline. What somebody might get in 3 months, it might take you 3 years to get there. But when you get there, you'll stay there for probably the next 30. So it's such a matter of luck and destiny and hard work. There are too many things involved with acting today. So there is no set pattern that even a casting director can sit you down and guide you with. There's nothing that we can also tell apart from the fact that just be a good actor and just be patient, and you will be watched, you will be found, you will be visible. Your talent outshines everything. Your face, your body, everything will finally just go down the drain one day. But what you were made of, your substance is something that will always stay within you. So be humans of substance before you become actors of substance. A kokla human being, somebody who's hollow, somebody who's got no experience in terms of life, or like we say life experiences, will never, I don't think will ever be a very emotive actor, because he doesn't know those emotions. He's never experienced it. You've got to be an emotional being, first of all. If you come to me saying, I'm a man, I cannot cry, then I'm sorry, you will never be an actor. Because there is nothing in this world that can restrict you. There's nothing in this world that you cannot know as an actor. I mean, as an actor, you've got to know your music, you've got to know your food, you've got to know the art around you, you've got to know the environment around you, you've got to be observant, you've got to be absorbent. I mean, there is so much that you need to do. You cannot just lock yourself in a room with books about acting and then get out there in auditions and say, that I've read this book and I've followed this method. I've trained myself for 3 years. No, you've not, because you've not seen the world outside, and things have changed. You do not know how to interact with a rickshaw wala, for that matter. So there is no way you can be a good actor like you're calling yourself. These are just myths. These are fads that a lot of actors are living, and I think they're just living under the rock.
Moving on to the craft, have you faced any difficulties, during a project? Like, what has been the most difficult project for you till date to cast?
I wouldn't say that a particular project has been overall difficult. All the projects that I've handled have had one difficult casting for sure. Mumbai Diaries was a tough one to cast. Mumbai Diaries was very tough to cast because mm, a lot of actors knew those emotions because they were from Bombay when the incident happened. A lot of them had no idea. They did not feel, they knew that Mumbai was hurt, and the country was hurt as a whole, but they did not feel that thing because they were not in Mumbai or from Mumbai altogether. So, yeah, just to instill that fear, just to instill that empathy for everybody across the country, particularly in Mumbai, was a task with actors. Um, there was a casting where we needed about an 80-year-old woman, who was a victim, who was also kind of affected by it. That was very difficult casting because we needed a Punjabi speaking actress for that. And that took us quite some time, I remember, to find a woman. I watched an ad and I just kind of like figured out from there that we should test her, and that's how she was cast. The Office was a very, very difficult process. It was a very difficult job because The Office was being shot in a mockumentary style of filmmaking where you needed to speak to the camera all the time. And actors in our country, like we say, we follow a particular way of learning and everything. They're taught not to look into the camera ever, because you're always talking to somebody. So to bring those actors to cut into the camera, and like start talking to the camera as if it's a human being or as if it's your co-actor, that took us a long, long time. Actors did not know how to like just cut into the camera and break the fourth wall and start talking into it. So Office was difficult. The Empire was difficult because of the language. We needed people with clipped Urdu, or words which were Persian or stuff like that. So obviously we tried to cast as many actors who were good at Urdu, or experienced actors who could kind of like get the tone right. Absolutely, because you had to look a certain way. Then you had to wear a lot of like grandeur on yourself, and then speak with that sort of elan and that panache that royalties do. And every show, yeah, every casting's been very complicated.
No,
Not
but from
not
what I'm
overall,
hearing,
but one or two characters definitely somewhere.
but what I'm hearing from you, I kind of get the gist that if anybody is a good actor, he or she should definitely try to hone multiple skills. Like for example, you may not need to be from a particular region to have great Urdu, for example. Maybe you can just take that up as a hobby, things
Absolutely,
like that.
absolutely. Yeah. Or
That's
even
what I'm
even
trying to
even
understand what you're saying. Yeah.
even foreign languages for that matter. I mean, if you have a knack for French, or you have a knack for Spanish, like there are so many French words that we use in our daily English as well now. There's entourage or
Yes.
something like that, or like joie de vivre, or we say modus operandi, which is Latin, of course.
Yes.
And if you come into an audition and you do not know the pronunciation of their word, either research on it or ask your casting assistant how is it pronounced, how is it in, rather than just calling entourage in a just calling it entourage or entourage in your audition, and just make the other person startled, because you were going so well, you were doing so well, and suddenly when another language comes in, you do not know how to say that. So my only thing is, it just takes 2 seconds to type that word on Google and hear its pronunciation once and figure out where that word is coming from. And writing has really evolved. We are trying to kind of like, the world, like we say, it's becoming smaller, and so is content for that matter. We're trying to incorporate a lot of foreign words into it. We actually look for actors who can speak French, and for a certain sort of class that we are trying to show in the project. Little things. I mean, if you're eating, if you're talking khandvi or dhokla, or if you don't know how to pronounce a fafra or an undio for that matter, it just hurts. It just hurts. You're in Bombay, you come across Gujarati food every day. How can you not pronounce that word? And you being called for to play a Gujarati, or not. Maybe you're in Ahmedabad right now, and you have to speak that, right? Ki, bhaiya, ek plate fafda dena. अब तुमने फाफड़ा को फाफडा बोल दिया है. And it just hurts me as a casting director, thinking कि आपको इतना तो पता होना चाहिए ना. Then you can't come and say कि मैं तो पंजाब से हूँ, I've never eaten fafda in my life, so I don't know how it is pronounced. You know what I'm saying? So that is why for an actor today, knowing his food, knowing cultures, just be an ethnograph. You have to kind of like love ethnology. You have to know different cultures. You have to understand what Bengalis eat, how they talk. Just simple things like that.
So, in your casting journey, which has been quite dynamic actually, given all the shows you've done, uh, were there any instances which you would want to revisit? You said that I could have done this better.
I know. I just love everything that I do. It's also because I put in a lot of research. My only worry starts happening when we get too close to the shooting timelines, and that's when we are casting. Because I really am scared of a quality drop in my work. Then because that is the time when casting becomes very time bound. It's not talent bound anymore. Because time pe karna hai, parson shoot hai, abhi ye chahiye. So these are instances that really scare me. Let's not stretch it to a point where it comes so close to the shoot that that I'm not able to quality control it at all. But fortunately, I have created Hawkeyes in my office, in my team members, and nothing that goes out of my office uh, can be substandard for that matter. I mean, I cannot say use the word substandard because they're all actors, they're all human beings, but something which is not suited to that profile. So we will still work hard, then. I definitely think I could have done better casting in Rocket Boys with the foreigners, but we were extremely tied, in terms of the availability of foreign actors in the country back then, because it
Yes,
was the
pandemic.
peak of pandemic. Most of them had gone back to their countries. We could not fly them down, and there were a lot of restrictions. So I wouldn't blame it on myself, but then yes, I mean that is something that I would always, like wonder that if I had more availability, if I had more choices, I would have definitely gone for some more people there. Um, that's been the only, and it's not even a qualm, because otherwise I think the show was so beautifully cast and it was so beautifully made. Rocket Boys has done wonders for all of us, and yeah, and season 2 is here now. It's going to be up very soon, so I'm excited for that. But no, I think I love all my work. I love all my work because of the actors that were in it. All of them have justified them my choices. All of them have justified my fight for them. There's nobody, even a non-speaking actor, who's just gone there to stand, or who's just gone to do just add to that particular frame. I've been happy with those also.
So, Kavish, I think we can definitely conclude that casting pretty much is the mold or the melting pot for the story of any content,
I
right?
mean,
Whether it's
that's
a
the meaning.
web
That's the
series.
meaning of the word. I mean, to
So,
cast is to mold. Yeah.
yes. So, tell us a little bit about challenges that you face. Have you had any challenges about getting credit for your work? We see spot boys, light boys, or, all the entire cast at the end of the credits. Is that something? And I think casting should be pretty much there in the center of the main credits, because that's exactly the function that you perform. What have been
I
your
agree.
challenges?
I
And I
agree.
want to put it out there so that at least everybody should be recognized for the work that they do.
Absolutely. I just kind of believe that, we are probably the first few people to be brought on board. Probably the first. I mean, after the writing is done and after this thing, there are so many times when the director's also not on board a project when we are already on it. We are casting, and then the director is chosen, and then he comes on board, and we don't find our credits a lot of times in the opening credits. Casting directors are not credited in the opening credits of a lot of shows. uh, and it hurts. I mean, obviously it hurts. It's just sad to see, that a lot of other HODs are there. And having said that, I'm not going to even compare myself to a director or the editor, or somebody who's been on the sets throughout. But I think it also happens because we are never on the sets. I mean, at least me as a casting director, my job ends before the shoot. So I do not like to go and hang on the sets, all day, and just be visible there, because I have 50 other things to do, by that time, in that time, during that period. But that doesn't take away from our contribution to the project particularly. We found you those actors. um, like initially when I started, I remember a very big web series that I had cast. They forgot my credit altogether. They just forgot it. Like, it's an HOD, it's a department missing from your this thing, and nobody has realized that. And it's only when I wrote an email, obviously the platform apologized, and the production apologized, and they changed it immediately overnight. I don't know how did they do that. But a lot of times they forget about, like recently, one of the shows that released, they forgot my assistant's ka credit. And while I was just thinking that, okay, so they were very sure that they put my name in there, but they've just completely forgotten that I'd also sent my team the credits to them as well. And somebody hasn't just checked it, that if the casting department is also mentioned there. You had costume assistants mentioned there, you had production design assistants mentioned there. You had every assistant, you had the gaffer team, you had the lighting team, the, like you said, like the camera guys, the sound guys. I only had two people to be mentioned there, just two of my boys, who just put everything of their into that particular show. And it was heartbreaking for me. And I'm not the kind of boss or the kind of HOD who would just say, my name's there, now I don't bother. I was hurt, and I took the boys out for dinner, I remember, and I said that, that nahi hoga iske baad aisa kuch, and this is what we are working for eventually, Lohita. I mean, it's not just ki kaam kiya aur chhod diya aur aage badh gaye. You've got to be a little emotional about your credit on a particular this thing. It happens. We casting directors never get opening credits. I mean, very rarely. Recently I've realized that, a lot of big shows have started given me credit in the opening credits. But why is it left to discretion? Why is it so open that जब मन किया डाल देंगे, नहीं मन किया तो एंड में डालेंगे स्लेट में? Like, it's just I don't know. Actors don't give credits. I mean, actors forget us during the interviews and all. It's very common that I've read, I got the audition and I cracked it and I met the director and boom, I was at the set, doing my thing. No mention of the casting director whatever. So obviously it's a very, very thankless job also. It's a very thankless job. And I wonder what can be done to make it more conspicuous and more relevant to the people that who think it's not.
Talking about it is the first step that we did today. I think people should, sometimes people just overlook, and I think this is a great way to put that voice out there.
Social media assets, they're not tagging us. They're tagging all the actors, those 7 actors or 8 actors that you are tagging. I got them, so like I understand that, there are times when they say if we tag you, then we have to tag everybody and everything. But what's the harm? You just have to tag this thing, there is no restriction on social media. It will only make a person feel good about it, and make him feel inclusive and a part of it. And why not? I was the first part of it, so I think I have to I've really started, like feeling about this thing recently. Earlier, when things were smaller, I was just new to the business. I thought maybe aisa hi hota hoga. But then it's so left to their choice. Some people tag, one day they'll tag you, in other project they won't tag you. And I'm talking about the same production or the same platform. There's no set particular pattern for this कि HODs हैं तो उनको tag कर दो. Because why? Because we are not on the set. Costume people are not tagged so many times. The sound designers are not tagged. It's just sad.
Yeah, so
Because
I think this is a great forum to talk about it, and we have seen even internationally, casting always gets its credit. And I think we should definitely, I think you should, along with your peers, work towards that, setting that as a norm.
yeah,
What would be your advice to young people looking to get into the field of casting?
I think at the most primal level, at the primary part of it is to be in love with people. You have to have a knack for people. You cannot be an introvert, or somebody who's not interested in interactions, or like a socially awkward person and try and get into casting. Because casting, no matter how much you think is back end, and you'd only be auditioning people or just reading scripts, it's not. You have to deal with a lot of emotions, you have to deal with a lot of aspirations, you have to be very understanding, you have to be extremely patient. Um, uh, you like I said, just at the very base level, you have to be a people's person. You have to be somebody who loves faces, who loves people, who finds beauty in every face that he comes across. You have to be interested in career making. You cannot be selfish all the time. You have to be extremely, in fact, you have to be extremely selfless, while you're doing this. So even as an aspiring actor, if you want to start with casting particularly, you cannot put your desires or dreams before the other actor that you're auditioning. So like I said, selflessness is one of the key qualities. A non-biased approach towards people. We'll always, of course, form biases as human beings. We have expectations and we have biases, towards people. But I think we should have bias towards talent more than just human beings in particular. You cannot be myopic in your vision. You have to be extremely far-sighted. You have to like look beyond a bearded face. You have to look beyond makeups. You have to look beyond a wig. You have to look beyond a lot of things. Not just what is visibly, like just right in front of you. So yeah, you have to be instinctive. Your instincts need to work like really quickly. You've got to be emotional so as to feel their emotions and to explain emotions to them, which need to be coming out in their auditions particularly. It's a lot of things. And you have to be very intelligent. You have to be very well read. You have to have a knack for languages. You have to know your cultures, because you will be casting so many things that come your way. You cannot say that, I'm from Bombay, so I don't understand what this UP language is. You just cannot be that thing. There are shows based in Kashmir. You have to understand the problems in Kashmir. There are shows based in the Northeast. There are shows based in Bengal. The beauty of being an Indian. I don't think anybody enjoys it more than a casting director, because we get to read so much about the nation, stories that we've never heard of, real life stories, that we've never known, or incidences, or a kind of pattern or behavioral pattern that a show talks about. Like Patal Lok was an eye opener for me. It was genuinely an eye opener, and I more than the fact that I enjoyed the show. It was the way it was made. It was so informative. To me, Rocket Boys. When I was reading it, I said, "Oh my God, did this happen? Did this happen? This way?" Empire. When I was reading about the Mughal Empire and Babar's reign, there was so much knowledge that I have gotten, through that, about that period and about those people. So yes, you have to have your brain open towards newer information. You have to be a seeker. You just have to be a seeker. You have to seek goodness, knowledge, information, beauty in everything that you do. You've got to be much more than just a person who's holding the camera and auditioning you and making you meet the director. There's way beyond. I mean, there's a lot beyond this that you need to be a that you have to be a casting director now.
Kavish, thank you for this passionate and very inspiring discussion with us. I'm sure this will inspire a lot of people to get into casting, and also for those working on the technical side of things, they will understand that casting is such an important function in creating content and also inspiring creativity. And I hope every casting director does get their due credit in that process. Thank you so
Absolutely.
much
I
for
wish that for
this
all of
discussion
us.
with us.